walk in the back 40. It's so your property is kind of like your country. You know, you gotta make sure your sovereignty over your property is enforced. Go for a walk on it every once in a while. Anyhow, I've been getting lots of communications, and this is not something that's just happened recently. This is something that I've been asked over and over and over again throughout the years, actually, since I've started the YouTube channel up. And it is, how do you find yourself nice Milsurp rifles, especially the Lee Enfields? Like, where are you finding them? And here's the thing. When I first started getting interested in military surplus firearms, I knew nothing about Milsurps. Kind of like I think a lot of you are kind of are in the same boat that I was in, and it took me a long time to kind of know, to understand, and become familiar with the there's a bit of a community in Canada and the United States, or in the United States there's probably way more, but there is a community of individuals in Canada that enjoy military surplus firearms. They generally are people that are, to one extent or another, historians that are interested in military history, domestic history, kind of the ballistics of the calibers that are used in these rifles. They're generally hand loaders, because a lot of these military surplus firearms you can't buy factory ammunition for them anymore, so you have to get the components and build your ammunition yourself in order to keep these rifles running, for you to fully have the appreciation and experience of shooting that rifle, understanding it, shooting it well, and appreciating what makes that rifle special. It's all part of the world of, it's all part of the puzzle that makes up a person that's interested in military surplus firearms. So it's not just one aspect, it's multifaceted. And what I can say about trying to find examples that are historically correct and are in good shape, it takes a lot of, I should say a lot, but it does take some education for you to know what a good example looks like, rather than buying out a burned out example that's never going to shoot well. It might be unsafe to shoot because you're a novice, and maybe somebody has taken advantage of your lack of experience and knowledge, and that is always sad when that happens. It's happened to me. I'm sure to a certain extent many of you have been taken advantage of by somebody who has not described a rifle correctly, or is just trying to sell you something that it isn't. For example, recently there was our Martini Henry that had been rebarreled in 303 Metford, and it was really strange because this Henry Martini had a volley sight on it, kind of like a Lee Metford or a number 1 Mark III, before they become rebuilt. And it was put together. Somebody just kind of took a bunch of different Enfield parts and slapped it all together and tried to sell it as a historical piece, and it wasn't. It's just a parts gun. So what I've done, is I have invested in a small library. I mean, there's some excellent books out there, and I put a couple of addresses down below for you to find them in your feed. I don't know the ISBN numbers, but I'll provide that. You can get them on Amazon and different publications, and they're excellent resource material. Some of them are very expensive. Okay, so you need to educate yourself. What countries made which models, or which Mausers went to which country, and who's the manufacturer, and how many were made, and that serial number means it was made in 1932 or whatever. So there is resource material out there for you to help you get yourselves oriented and educated in the world of military surplus firearms. So that's a big part of it, is your education of the history, so that you know a real piece when you see it. The value. how do I value these things? Well, value is based on so many different things, and I'm not going to remember all of them right now, but I'll give you a few. Value will be based on the number of the pieces that were made, or the number of those rifles that were made, for example. I may have been a very, very small order, like for a country like Peru, for example. Right? A country like Peru had an incredibly high, they put a lot of quality and thought into the type of firearm they wanted to issue to their infantry soldiers, cavalrymen, and their navy. And so they spared no expense when it came to the type of rifles that they had manufactured, and to the quality and the degree of these German Mausers that they issued to their troops and sailors. It was just phenomenal. And even by today's standards, to get a Model 1909 or a Model 1932 or some of these Mausers are just absolutely exceptional. So there's that. It's the rarity. Secondly, I would say it's probably got to do with the quality of the manufacturing, such as what I've just referred to. The Germans spared no expense and this is the craftsmanship that goes into some of these rifles is exemplary. So that obviously also has an impact on the value of what you can expect to pay for it. And lastly, it's got to do with historical precedent and condition. Probably the last one. It's condition, obviously. So there are NRA, National Rifle Association, has a pedigree system of evaluating a rifle's value based on its condition. So I recommend you look at that. I've done a video on NRA conditions codes. I was hugely sick when I made that video, so it's pretty dry, but it's good information that'll help you to determine what a rifle's value is. So those kind of three core areas is what I'll be paying attention to, and then I will start up a dialogue with that person, and I want to know details, especially when it comes to bore condition. If they're not familiar with the NRA grading codes, then I will ask them to give me a detailed description of what that bore looks like when you look through it. You shine a light, you look in through the other end, and I'll describe what it is I want them to tell me, and as graphically as possible, so that I can conceptualize what the barrel condition is. Examine the grooves. Are they dark? Are they bright? When was the last time you cleaned it? If this is a novice or somebody who's not quite so experienced, I will ask them those specific questions. Is the rifling sharp? Is it mirror bright? If you examine the muzzle on a 45, can you see the rifling? Is it clear and pronounced? Or are they rounded and pitted? Are the numbers matching on the receiver and the bolt? Are all the parts matching? Some countries put a number on every single part that was built onto that rifle. It's like the Swedish Model 96 Mausers, like everything's got 3 digits. A lot of the German Mausers that haven't been scrubbed that are original, those numbers will remain on the rifle. If it's been scrubbed, that means it's a captured rifle, and a lot of these things were re-stamped and matched, but they're not truly original to the rifle, such as Russian capture K98Ks after World War II, and then reissued to other countries. For example, the Norwegians used the K98 rebarreled 30-06 for the infantry, and the Navy retained the 8x57 chambering, but they had all new marks attached to it. So a rifle can go from one country to a different country to a different country, or different units, and they're all going to put their acceptance marks on it, the unit markings, and maybe rack numbers that are on the rifle. It's all part of the kind of the journey that rifle had made from manufacture all the way through its lifespan before it was surplus to the civilian market. Again, that's all history as well. Another thing that you may also want to take into consideration is trying to resource specific individuals that are just really well versed in this area. I have probably in the neighborhood of around a half dozen individuals that I have really good buying and selling relationships with. because we know what each other's expectations are when it comes to the description of a rifle that we are interested in. So we kind of speak the same language. When I say a barrel is very good plus or excellent, he knows what that means. And he trusts me to be able to diagnose a rifle or to describe a rifle accurately. So he will be able to buy it from me, or I will be able to buy it from him with confidence that I'm getting something that I know is correct. Right? And so that comes into the experience of the people that you associate yourself with. There are people that are extremely good at precision firearms and tolerances and the science that goes along with being a high precision shooter. They will have a certain pedigree of firearm that they are interested in. Obviously description, round count, just the inventory of things that you need to pay attention to for a precision shooter. They're going to want to pass that information along with the rifle. Also, maybe certain rifles have pet loads that work exceptionally well. That is part of the whole package of that rifle. The information, what the rifle will be able to perform with those loads, that information gets passed on with the rifle. And that's kind of where the experience of the owner was to pass that world along with the rifle, because it will be it will be an additional value to the end user. I don't know, that's just a real short video. I know I'm missing lots, but so you have been asking me about this stuff, and so again, I would say know your history. The parentage of a rifle. There's a historical timeline that kind of comes along with that. Becoming familiar with stamps. There's so many of them. There's just way too much for you to memorize. You'll memorize some of the key ones, some of the stamps, and what they mean, and the purpose that they were used for, like proof marks, acceptance marks. These are all different stamps that go on all of these surplus rifles, especially the Australian ones. So many of them had a different inspection mark and new stamps. So some of these rifles are just covered in these stamps, which is pretty cool if you ask me. You're not going to be able to remember what each and every single one of those things means. There's millions of them. So you need to develop yourself a bit of a library, whether it's electronic or a physical library. I like opening up a book, flipping to the page and examining it, rather than having to sit for an hour doing Google searches trying to find websites that have this information on it. It's incomplete. Your time is worth something. Maybe you should just spend the $60 to have that resource in your library so it's there when you need it, as you need it. Especially when it comes to, if you're interested in a purchase, you can do all of those. You can look at the pictures. You can, by the way, that's another issue altogether. PhotoBucket and all these different sites, Image Tree or whatever they're doing. Those sites are, it's not working out very well lately. They've been really laggy, and sometimes they just won't load. But asking for certain pictures, specific pictures that you can ask for from somebody, and if they're too lazy to get off their butt from their computer station and take the rifle out, examine what you're asking them to do, and take a picture of that thing, if they won't do that for you, then they're not really that keen on trying to sell it. So that's another aspect of this, which is working with the seller or working with a buyer to fill you with the confidence to make to make an educated purchase. Okay, I mean, we're all very, very tired of spending sometimes not a lot of money, but sometimes a lot of money, and then getting something that is not what we thought it was. Okay, because we didn't ask the right questions. Or maybe this person is just being purposefully misleading that sold you a particular item. Having said that, most sites that we will frequent, sometimes they're electronic sites. Very few of us are doing it through the newspapers anymore. So you're using the technology that's available to you. Many of these sites will have a feedback rating. And what you can do is look at their profile, examine their feedback rating, and if they've got a number of strikes against them because they've misled people, or just the deal didn't work out well. Not everybody's a people person. Or they're bad communicators, or they're like that. I just won't deal with them. be honest with you. They won't get my business. Or even if they got something that I really want, been there, done that. I'm not going to go through it again. So I just avoid those people. And frankly, unfortunately, until they actually if they don't even have a feedback rating, if they're brand spanking new, I'm not going to do business with them. I'm sorry, but that's if they can start maybe selling low risk items such as stripper clubs. Sell some stripper clubs and build up your feedback rating, but don't expect to come onto an online forum or an internet website with a zero feedback, and then expect me to spend $2,500 on a Weatherby Mark V. Don't expect me to do it. It's just too much risk for me. You got to build up your feedback. If you're serious and you want to become a trader on these sites, you have to develop a feedback rating. And that'll give people more confidence to do business with you. Start small and work your way up, okay? Develop that trust and that feedback rating. This here is also something that is very, very related to the subject. I forgot to bring it up. And that has to do with the kind of people that you hire and put them in a department store area where the firearms are kept, and they know nothing about firearms. Essentially their knowledge goes to the difference between a bolt action, a lever action, brake action, pump action. It's really not much more knowledge than that. And these are the people that you just need a drone to sit behind the counter and watch it. But they know nothing about the subject. They know nothing about the activities, or much of it anyways. And for me, this is a huge pet peeve. As somebody who owns a business, if you're going to hire somebody into your business to sell product, you're obviously going to want to put somebody there that has some worldly knowledge. Now, I realize there seems to be fewer and fewer older hands that know some of these older firearms. But basic skill and knowledge so far is being able to grade a firearm. There's certain stuff that you as an employer can teach your subordinate, so they're able to give basic information to somebody who's obviously interested in looking at a firearm that's on the wall. Says, yes, absolutely, that my boss has told me that's a Royal Ordnance Factory. It's a number 4 Mark II, 1955. That particular firearm is, this is the history, this is some basic information on it, and so you've just given this person that's interested in that firearm some information that will help them to make an educated purchase. Just a real pet peeve of mine. You go into a gun store, you want to get some information on it, and the person behind the counter is extremely unhelpful. For people like me, and for a lot of people like you, you know exactly what I'm talking about. So this message is to the employers of those companies. Get people that know what the hell they're doing, and if they don't, teach them, or find somebody that can teach them. Hope that helps, folks. It's just a real kind of a snapshot into the world of somebody who's interested in getting into Milsurps, kind of the homework you need to do, the research you need to do, developing the relationships, and developing trust kind of with that cadre or level of kind of Milsurp enthusiasts, so you can speak the same language and have confidence and trust. And in the end of it, you'll probably end up, when these people get a higher level of feedback and trust with the community, you can start asking a little bit more what these firearms are actually worth. Okay? Alright, so I mean, if somebody doesn't have a good feedback rating, they're trying to sell something, like I said, start small, sell some of the cheaper items and whatnot. But don't expect to sell really expensive items if you don't have a good feedback rating. Riflechair signing off. Hope we're all doing well. It wasn't an exhaustive list, but it's an insight into this thing. All right. Might help you, it might not. Cheers. Maple Leaf up.